Hello and welcome to another Smash Ultimate video. With E3 around the corner, I wanted to finally take on a video that I've had on the back burner for a while. When it comes to newcomers joining the Smash roster, speculators like myself often focus on big-name third-party companies that could join the club. Since Brawl, we've seen the likes of Sega, Konami, Capcom, Bandai Namco, Square Enix, SNK, and Microsoft join the roster with their iconic characters. In discussing Western companies, conversation often gets even more deliberating, as Microsoft, Rare, and Retro are really the only ones, or at least the big ones. However, one seemingly out there company is consistently brought up for their massive impact on the gaming industry: Valve. Founded by former Microsoft employees in 1996, Valve immediately changed the landscape of gaming with the success of their first game, Half-Life. Now known for series such as that, Counter-Strike, Portal, Team Fortress, Left 4 Dead, Dota, and probably most prevalent today, their storefront Steam, Valve has been a mainstay in the industry and carries a huge part of modern gaming's legacy. Personally, despite Valve properties being pervasive to meme culture in my childhood, I hadn't played a ton of Valve's games until recently. I played a lot of Left 4 Dead 2 in high school, but didn't play Half-Life 1 and 2, Portal 1 and 2, or Team Fortress 2 until just recently. Even so, I love every Valve game I've played, and combined with their status in gaming, I've always felt they'd be a great company to consider the Smash possibilities. But the question is, who would it be? With so many iconic franchises and characters, which would receive the invitation? That is precisely what I wanted to explore in this video. Now that we know what DLC representation can look like, I wanted to cover Valve's most iconic franchises and discuss which one I think would be best for Smash. Before I get too deep into that, I want to discuss a broader topic when it comes to Smash newcomers. With the games and characters I'll be covering, we veer into the discussion of a first-person shooter representative. Basically, there's a large group of people, myself included, who think that regardless of the character, a fighter built around the concept of bringing the FPS genre to Smash would inherently be unique and interesting with the new tools they'd bring to the roster. So in talking about these Valve reps, I would also like to touch on how they could represent this gaming genre. If we were to break this concept of an FPS rep down into gameplay elements, I'd say it's primarily dependent on the correlation between range and power. The arsenals of these characters are built so that certain weapons have usefulness at certain times. To me, most FPS characters brought to Smash would fight at mid-range using weapons like pistols and machine guns that rack up damage without the most kill power. You then choose if you want to increase or decrease range based on a few trade-offs. By getting closer, you can use weapons like a shotgun or a melee weapon that are the strongest moves that put you in the most danger. However, you could instead move farther away with something like a rocket launcher, dealing increased damage but being longer and requiring more accuracy to execute. You can apply whatever characteristics on top of that, whether they be a rushdown character like Doomslayer or a zoner like Master Chief, but this core framework will mostly be the case for any FPS character. And while I do feel that those two in particular are the best representatives for the genre, I'm going to avoid talking about them too much going forward to focus on how these Valve characters could build on that template. With that out of the way, let's dive into my Valve series of choice that will be up for newcomer consideration. I tried to choose games with a combination of reputation, personal interest, and identifiable characters. The 4 series I picked are Half-Life, Team Fortress 2, Portal, and Left 4 Dead. Let's start with the youngest franchise of the group. The first Left 4 Dead game was released by Valve in 2008, with Left 4 Dead 2 coming out only a year later, along with official DLC being made up until 2011, and community-made Valve-approved DLC coming out in 2020. The series is a co-op zombie survival FPS with 4 survivors fighting through horde-infested environments attempting to get to safety. There's plenty of your average cannon fodder infected, but what helps set the game apart are the special infected with unique designs and abilities that really shake up the gameplay and lead to tense situations where you either work together or die. This is by far the Valve series I've spent the most time with, despite really only playing Left 4 Dead 2. It's a ton of fun with some iconic maps and became one of my group's go-tos alongside huge series like Halo, COD, and Gears of War. However, I chose to talk about Left 4 Dead first because of its major problems with Smash consideration, being the choice of playable fighter. Typically, you would go with a player character, and you could easily have a Koopa Kid situation here with the 8 survivors of Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, if not just choosing one of the more popular ones like Bill or Coach. However, the fact that none of them have unique abilities, are average humans, and use run-of-the-mill FPS weapons means that none of them are very exciting as newcomers. None of them would really best represent represent Valve or the horror elements of Left 4 Dead and would be extremely average choices for an FPS rep. That brings us to the actual horror element of Left 4 Dead, the zombies. The standard zombies don't have much going on. If you want to see what an actual good zombie moveset could be like, go watch the Ready Moveset Go episode 10 with PK King's Plants vs. Zombies moveset. Instead, we could look at the special infected with some of their extremely recognizable designs. Even then though, moveset potential is limited. There's no real way to have the witch work, and every other one kinda has one trick up their sleeve. The Boomer could slime you and spawn other zombies to attack you, Hunter and Charger pin you down, Smoker tethers you, Spitter shoots acid, Jockey messes up your movement, and the Tank is just big and strong and flings things around. Short of making a newcomer built on the Director, the AI that controls the flow of zombies in Left 4 Dead, I just don't see how you'd make a full moveset out of any one thing from the games. Where I really think Left 4 Dead could shine is the more background elements of Smash. Whether they came with another Valve rep or not, you could have something like a coach outfit for Meat Gunner, a Hunter outfit for Meat Brawler, or assist trophies with the Hunter or Boomer, or maybe even multiple special infected. Spirit battles could also be a really interesting way to represent the franchise. There's a lot of iconic things that this staple zombie shooter could bring to Smash, but I really don't think any of them could result in a playable fighter. Moving on, we now start to talk about the three that actually have a decent amount of support for Smash, starting with Team Fortress 2. While the original Team Fortress was released in 1996 and remade in 1999, it's the 2007 sequel Team Fortress 2 that has really stuck around and influenced competitive FPS games like Overwatch. TF2 is a class-based team game with a cartoony red team and blue team fighting in game modes like Capture the Flag, Control Points, Payload, and King of the Hill. There's really not much more depth to the story, but like I said, it's been incredibly influential while still being popular in its own right to this day. As for my own experience, I only recently tried the game to get a handle on the characters for this video, and it's fun. Yep. With its exaggerated design and distinct classes, choosing a character for Smash is much easier and becomes more of an ARMS situation, choosing a character with a mix of popularity and mechanical uniqueness. While each character has their claim to fame, one look at polls like Source Gaming's Mega Smash poll and the global Smash roster will give you the clear first choice: the Heavy. As one of the main faces of TF2, the Heavy has been an oddly highly requested newcomer for Smash's DLC, and honestly I do think he would be my choice from TF2 as well. His overall feel and design would be good, adding another super heavy and weight to the roster, and would certainly be a new take on that build with his weapons. His neutral special and maybe some of his Smash attacks would revolve around his minigun, with a slow startup but chunking out huge damage at mid-range. He could also use his secondary weapon, the shotgun, for close-up kills, and his fists to fill out the rest of his moveset. Just go watch Brawlfan's moveset video, most of my ideas overlap with his anyway, and he does a really good job. There's a few others who I think would be good choices. The Sniper, if for no other reason than a sniper rifle in Smash would be new and interesting, the Pyro for the same reason but replace Sniper with Flamethrower, and the Engineer, able to build various equipment around the stage to aid him, like turrets and teleporters. They'd also come alongside a stage set in one of the dusty desert environments from the game's maps. But even though there's a handful of characters that I could easily imagine in Smash, when it comes to making a full moveset for any of them, I get a little wary. Especially for the Heavy, despite being the main choice, I don't think his moveset would be all that interesting in its entirety. Same goes for Sniper and Pyro, basically any character that just has 3 weapons and a passive ability. The Engineer probably actually has the most raw moveset potential, with Shotgun as neutral special, the pistol and wrench used throughout the normals, then having the turret, teleporter, and dispenser. But then we get into the conversation of, is Engineer from TF2 really the character they'd look to for Smash? This is where TF2 falls short compared to something like Overwatch for me. Regardless of what game you prefer to play, each Overwatch hero having a full backstory, extremely unique designs and weapons, and most importantly additional special abilities both passive and active, makes them much more Smash ready than the cast of TF2. Sure, you could bring it back to the ARMS comparison and say a character doesn't need a ton of varied moves to work, but I think Min Min is more of an exception than the rule. Both TF2 and Overwatch ride a line of having unique characters breaking away from the core functionality of the game as a whole, and unfortunately I think TF2 falls on the wrong side of that line. Just like Left 4 Dead, there's plenty of great stuff TF2 could bring to Smash in other capacities. Heavy, Pyro, and Soldier as Meat Gunners, Scout and Spy as Meat Sword Fighters, and Spirit Battles would all be great. Even the TF2 theme alone would be awesome to have in Smash. But when it comes to a full newcomer, TF2 sits somewhere in between Left 4 Dead and the other two games in this discussion. Great characters that would fit right in with unique gimmicks, but not fully formed enough to pique my interest. Now let's take it back to the beginning as we discuss the real heavy hitters in Valve's pool of characters. Half-Life, Valve's first game, was released in 1998 to universal acclaim. Starring silent protagonist and theoretical physicist turned hero Gordon Freeman, this FPS paved a new road in the tone and pacing of the genre as you take on other dimensional threats, military cover-ups, and a whole lot of unforeseen consequences. This was followed up by the continually phenomenal Half-Life 2 in 2004, Half-Life 2 Episode 1 in 2006, Episode 2 in 2007, and Half-Life Alyx in 2020, though that doesn't star the hazard suit-clad Freeman. With an array of weapons both conventional and game-defining, Gordon Freeman has become one of the faces in the FPS genre. I first played Half-Life at the end of last year and finished Half-Life 2 a few weeks before this recording, and I love them both. Half-Life 1 has an extremely tight setting and progression, even if Zen is a little weak, and Half-Life 2 has a huge variety of great set pieces with amazing new weapons. I highly recommend the series, and honestly any of the games in this video. Valve just makes great games. But let's turn our attention back to what kind of representation Half-Life could see in Smash. The obvious choice for playable character here is of course Gordon Freeman. Alex Vance may have recently stepped into the spotlight, but Gordon is still very much the face of the franchise and Valve as a company. As a regular human with the hefty HEV suit, Gordon would be middlingly durable and moderately slow and heavy, meaning keeping the upper hand on your opponent would be key to survival, which of course you would do with your weapons. Gordon's jab and tilts would all use his iconic crowbar, with decent damage but no strong knockback even from his crowbar dash attack. Aerials would also use another of his more early on weapons, pulling out a pistol or revolver to keep his distance. As with many FPS characters I design, I start to upgrade the arsenal at the smash attacks, using a pulse rifle barrage for F smash, a single extremely strong crossbow rebar shot for up smash, and a killer shotgun blast for down smash. Let's cover both his throws and his neutral special now, introducing another iconic Half-Life weapon, the gravity gun. Gordon would grab using the gravity gun to pull in enemies from farther away. It wouldn't actually grab until they get close, but it has a pretty far-reaching area of effect, pulling enemies towards Gordon. Once grabbed, enemies would be pummeled with energy bursts until being launched away by the gun. As for his neutral special, a single tap of the button sends a blast outwards with weak damage but crazy knockback. Holding the button would instead activate its grabbing again, only this time it attracts any item or physical projectile close enough. Crates, arrows, C4, you name it. You could then either drop it to pick it up for yourself or launch it at enemies at high speeds. Side B is the RPG, working like a cross between Snake's rockets and Pit's arrows. Up B is a bit of a stretch, using the barnacle grapple from Half-Life Opposing Force. This would more or less work like Joker's Up B, either tethering you to the stage or pulling enemies in for a strong bite. And down B are the Theropods. Throwing one onto an enemy will cause a short, quick barrage of ant lions, similar to the Beehive or Kuko items. And of course his final smash would be the Resonance Cascade, an explosive cutscene bringing enemies to the Black Mesa test chamber, then being overwhelmed on the world of Zen. Coming alongside Gordon would be a slew of great Half-Life representation featuring both allies and enemies. Spirit battles with Alex Vance, the G-Man, Dog, aliens from Zen, and the Combine would be shoo-ins. There's also tons of costume potential with things like an HEV suit for basically any Mii class, an Alex Gunner, G-Man Brawler, Combine Gunner, and Headcrab Helmet. And I think there's tons of great stage choices as well, from Black Mesa to Zen to City 17 to the Citadel. I do think Gordon has his share of things holding him back, but for now I'd like to move on to the final game of the video. The final Valve series I'll be bringing to the table is the first-person puzzle platformer Portal. The first Portal came out in 2007, followed by Portal 2 in 2011. Starring Valve's other silent protagonist Chell, you work against Aperture Science constructs like GLaDOS and Wheatley as you solve various test chambers using the portal gun. It's an extremely simple concept, but is executed to perfection in both games, in another example of Valve's amazing game design, mixing the use of momentum and switches and so many other great elements. Although I was aware of Portal in the late 2000s with things like The Cake is a Lie and Still Alive, I hadn't played the games until last year, but they're probably my favorites in Valve's library. However, puzzle games are often tricky when trying to convert them into a Smash fighter, so let's see how Chell holds up. As the clear choice of rep, Chell would be light, a little floaty, and not very heavy, despite what GLaDOS would tell you. Because of her key movement options that I'll get into later, Victory would be more about keeping enemies off their balance and not just winning direct brawls. In contrast to Gordon's arsenal, Chell would focus on herself and her portal gun for basically her entire moveset. Her basics and aerials would all either use a smack from the gun or a kick. Her grabs and throws would use the gun as well, but wouldn't quite have the crazy distance you would imagine from the gravity gun. Her F smash and up smash would use the portal gun to fire a high energy pellet, a little faster than Mega Man and able to bounce off a surface before disappearing. Despite its small size, this would pack a surprising punch. Meanwhile, her down smash would be a spin attack shooting a thermal discouragement beam, or deadly laser, along the ground ending in a fiery blast. Now we get into her specials. Before we really dive into the portal gun, Side B would deploy a turret that would stand around and shoot anyone that comes close enough to its laser sight, unless it's thrown or destroyed. Now for the portals. Neutral B would fire a portal, with holding the button allowing you to aim its trajectory around you. However, unlike in Portal itself, I'm allowing portals to remain in the air after a mid-range shot. I didn't want you to spawn in walls or anything, so I thought allowing you to fire portals on the ground or in the air would be the most interesting approach. You would change portal color with down B, swapping orange to blue on the ground or mid-air as needed. Momentum built traveling through portals would also add some additional damage and knockback to attacks while you have the momentum. Along with that, enemy projectiles count as reflected when they go through your portals to deal damage to the enemy, seeing as that's a core part of Portal's boss fights. These portals, combined with your up B, the aerial faith plate, are what really keeps Chell in the fight. While your up B is a modest recovery at best, combined with the portals, fighting Chell would be a tense game of trying to anticipate her teleportation and not getting hit by her strong smash attacks or turrets. Though, Chell needs to be careful to not aid in an enemy's recovery, as any fighter as well as items can pass through the portals. Her final smash would use a portal to bring GLaDOS to the battlefield, releasing droves of turrets along with lasers, rockets, and blasts of fire from the incinerator. Just like all the other Valve games, Chell and Portal would have plenty of amazing additional content to bring to Smash. Her stage would obviously be a test chamber, where you could implement some of the elements that couldn't appear in her moveset, like the gels. It would also be great to have GLaDOS talking and mocking the fighters on the stage. Spirit battles might be a little tricky, but there's still some great costume options like an Apture jumpsuit for the Mii's, a GLaDOS or Wheatley helmet, and maybe even body-altering costumes like Atlas and Peabody for the Gunner. Now that we've toured what these games could bring, let's put them together and see what might be the best choice for Valve in Smash. As I said, I tried to give both Left 4 Dead and Team Fortress their fair shakes, but I just don't really find them gripping enough to really go head to head with the more fleshed out characters. Left 4 Dead would only have some great additional content, and while Heavy or Engineer could probably work as newcomers, I don't think TF2 is really Valve's best potential offering. This leaves us with Gordon Freeman versus Chell. I'm going to judge them based on some of the factors that get a character into Smash, but I want to put two things forward first. One, I really like both of them, both their franchises and them as potential newcomers. Two, I do not think they're all that likely to get into Smash. Nintendo and Valve don't have much of a relationship, even if I find their game design philosophy fairly similar, and when it comes to FPS or puzzle game characters, there are certainly others that I think would take the spot over these two. Regardless, let's compare the two's potential inclusions. Looking at Gordon Freeman first, a huge point in his favor is his and Half-Life's gaming legacy. Half-Life was a landmark game for the FPS genre and the industry in general, and Gordon is the face of that. The consistent quality and reception of the series also ensures that Gordon has stayed in the minds of gamers, even with the lifetime of waiting for further installments. His appearance has just enough sci-fi or fictional elements to allow him to work in Smash kinda like Snake, and is of course extremely memorable. His glasses, HEV suit, crowbar, and gravity gun, it's all part of the total Half-Life and Valve image. The world of Half-Life is rich as well, lending to great stage options, spirits, and costumes, so where do the negatives come in? Well, personally, I'm not the most sold on his moveset potential. Treated just as a potential newcomer, the main thing setting Gordon up for success is the gravity gun, introducing a very unique tool to Smash. The rest of his moveset isn't as exciting to me necessarily, mostly pulling concepts from Samus, Snake, Mega Man, and Mii Gunner, and presenting them through a true FPS lens. Speaking of that, in thinking of Gordon as an FPS rep, I think he's just okay. Again, the intrigue mainly comes from the gravity gun, while other contenders like Doomslayer have a more interesting movement style or a tankier build like Master Chief. In general, while Gordon is iconic, him being a normal human makes him a little less exciting as an FPS rep than one of the super soldier space marines. Onto the other contenders, Chell doesn't have quite the same legacy pull as Gordon. Instead, what Portal contends with Half-Life in is raw popularity and reception. I think if you polled Valve fans and asked which they'd prefer, you'd come out pretty even. And Portal's influence in general gaming pop culture can't be understated. Chell similarly stands her ground in design with her stark orange and white attire and portal gun. I'd say Chell's main falling point against Gordon and Half-Life would be in all the extra content that would be added to Smash. Even with the immensely popular GLaDOS making an appearance in a test chamber stage, Half-Life's fully realized and expansive world provides so much to pull from, especially in terms of spirits. This is of course assuming that both could or could not bring in other Valve properties for things like Mii costumes. However, Chell immediately pulls attention back because of her moveset, which I have to say is probably my favorite for the Valve reps. It puts her in an interesting position where she doesn't really need to be thought of as an FPS rep because the concept of implementing portals is so insanely new and unique. It doesn't necessarily matter if she's not utilizing a full arsenal like Gordon because, again, portals. Being able to warp around stage, using momentum to your advantage, and trapping enemies with their own projectiles would bring something entirely different to the Smash roster in a way that Sakurai would definitely be looking for. At the end of all of this analysis, if you asked me who I'd want Valve to offer up to Smash, I think I'd have to go with Chell. But I want to know what you think. I may not really find any Valve character to be likely to get into Smash, but any of these characters could easily be someone's most wanted, and I think any could absolutely work. I'm by no means trying to discredit anyone, so I would love to hear your ideas for how these characters could work and what you'd want to see from Valve the most. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've had it planned for a long time, but only recently was able to do the gameplay I needed to really understand the characters. And I wanted to get this out on the incredibly out there off chance that one of these franchises shows its face at E3. Be sure to like this video and subscribe if you want to see more Smash content along with everything else I do like original music and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.